Benvenute e benvenuti al secondo appuntamento con le Padua Freedom Lecture, una serie di lezioni volte a sottolineare il valore fondativo della Libertas dell'Università di Padova. L'anno scorso, a maggio del 2020, vi avevamo lasciato con un'interessantissima lezione e un dialogo con il filosofo francese Jean-Luc Nancy, e oggi abbiamo l'onore di avere con noi nostra ospite la premio Nobel per la pace del 2011, Tawakkol Karman. Ringrazio voi che ci seguite da casa, la nostra ospite e ovviamente il rettore dell'Università di Padova, il professor Rosario Rizzuto, che è qui con noi e fra poco gli passerò la parola, e la professoressa Annalisa Obue, la prorettrice alle relazioni culturali, sociali di genere dell'Università di Padova. Io non mi dilungo oltre per non far perdere inutilmente tempo a questo importante evento e lascio la parola al professor Rosario Rizzuto per gli saluti istituzionali. Grazie.
Grazie, buonasera a tutte e tutti i nostri ospiti, buonasera alla nostra relatrice al premio Nobel Tawakkol Karman. È un evento speciale, è non solo una lettura che si chiama Freedom Lecture, lettura della libertà, di quella libertas che è il valore più forte della nostra università, ma è una lettura che ascoltiamo da un premio Nobel, che ascoltiamo da chi ha ricevuto il più prestigioso premio che chi frequenta un'università può mai desiderare di ottenere. E Tawakkol Karman l'ha ottenuto con una motivazione che emoziona noi tutti, credo deve emozionare qualunque persona con una sensibilità civile, perché l'ha ricevuto per la lotta non violenta, per la sicurezza delle donne e il diritto delle donne a partecipare alla costruzione della pace. E allora se rileggiamo e pensiamo a questa azione, credo che noi all'Università di Padova ci emozioniamo particolarmente, perché ci leggiamo i nostri valori, ci leggiamo la libertà, ci leggiamo i diritti, l'equità, i diritti per tutti, il valore, i diritti delle donne e ci leggiamo la pace. E ci leggiamo la pace che però non può avvenire se non a valle della conquista dei diritti fondamentali, non può avvenire se non a valle della libertà e a valle dell'equità. E allora benvenuta Tawakkol, l'Università di Padova è l'università in cui ti sentire a casa, perché è l'università che condivide i valori più profondi che hanno portato al tuo premio Nobel e condivide anche quello che non c'è nella motivazione, ma c'è nella vita e c'è nelle dichiarazioni di Tawakkol, che per i diritti bisogna lottare, non bisogna arrendersi mai, perché quando ci si arrende, quando si rinuncia alla speranza, si è perso. Mentre invece quando si combatte i diritti, magari con grande fatica, con grande sofferenza e con grandi sacrifici, ma i diritti arrivano. E allora è a casa in questa università, perché questa università è medaglia d'oro al valor militare, unica università in Italia per aver combattuto per i diritti nella seconda guerra mondiale, i diritti contro il nazifascismo, i diritti contro gli orrori dell'oppressione, combattendo in prima persona e quindi non facendo un passo indietro, ma essendo in prima linea, per usare di nuovo le parole che Tawakkol ha usato in alcune sue interviste. E poi sulle donne mi piace ricordare che Noi siamo l'università che ha laureato la prima donna al mondo, di nuovo un atto di coraggio, una donna che non ha rinunciato alle sue aspirazioni, a quello che allora era un diritto inimmaginabile e certamente molto contrastato, ma l'ha ottenuto e ha aperto la strada a una conquista faticosa di diritti che non si interrompe mai e per il quale dobbiamo continuamente tenere la guardia alta e penso a quante volte vengono messi in discussione i diritti delle donne, i diritti al lavoro, i diritti alla libertà, i diritti molto spesso anche alla vita personale. Non possiamo non vedere come anche nel nostro paese le violenze sulle donne, i femminicidi non sono scomparsi, anzi in quest'anno terribile che è stato l'anno della chiusura sociale, della pandemia, sono stati ancora più forti. E allora, come università, noi dobbiamo essere in prima linea, perché non ci può essere conquista permanente di diritti se non attraverso la consapevolezza culturale, attraverso l'alta educazione, quello che è il nostro compito, ma anche saper parlare alla società, saper parlare a tutte le società, alla società nostra, ma anche a società che sono lontane, quindi tenendo fede al nostro motto, che è Universa, Universis, Patavina Libertas, la libertà per tutti, non per qualcuno, non per coloro per cui è più facile, ma la libertà da portare nei posti più difficili, nelle situazioni più difficili. E lasciatemi concludere questo saluto e questo benvenuto veramente caloroso alla relatrice di oggi, che è l'immagine di quel momento di speranza che noi non vogliamo considerare chiuso, che è stata la primavera araba, con il pensiero doloroso a due persone. Le due persone sono Giulio Regeni, assassinato nel 2016, e per il quale non ci stanchiamo e non ci fermeremo nel chiedere verità e giustizia. Non ci dimentichiamo, insistiamo, il tempo passa, ma questa vergogna deve essere sanata almeno da un atto di giustizia. E il secondo è Patrick Zaki, che noi calcoliamo il tempo da quando è scoppiata l'epidemia Covid-19, febbraio 2020, un tempo lunghissimo che ha stravolto le nostre vite. Bene, da febbraio 2020 Patrick Zaki è ingiustamente in carcere in Egitto e quindi noi ci uniamo alla voce di tutti coloro che chiedono e devono chiedere la sua liberazione nel più breve tempo possibile, perché è passato già troppo tempo. Quindi benvenuta Tawakkol, grazie per l'esempio e grazie per quello che porterai oggi alla nostra università, che oggi spero sentirai un po' anche come la tua università.
Grazie al professor Rosario Rizzutto, rettore dell'Università di Padova, per questa introduzione che ci porta già nel cuore di quello che sarà l'argomento portante di questo evento. Prima di passare la parola alla professoressa Annalisa Oboe, ricordo che siamo in diretta sui canali YouTube dell'Università di Padova e che al termine della Lectio Magistralis di Miss Tawakkol Karman e del dialogo 2 con il professor Paolo De Stefani, professore di diritto internazionale del Dipartimento di Scienze Politiche, Giuridiche e Studi Internazionali, ci sarà la possibilità da parte vostra, di voi che ci seguite da casa, di portare delle domande a cui cercheremo ovviamente di rispondere. Grazie mille intanto ancora e professoressa Obe, lascio a lei la parola per l'introduzione della nostra ospite.
Grazie Mattia. Benvenute e benvenuti a tutti, a tutte a questo incontro con Tawakkol Karman, che saluto e che ringrazio di cuore, veramente con grande affetto, per aver accettato questo invito a parlare con noi oggi. Ringrazio anche il rettore perché credo che non ci sia nulla da aggiungere alle sue parole. Veramente pensate con il cuore e calorose, quindi spero davvero che Tawakkol si sentirà a casa oggi, virtualmente, idealmente, ma a casa. Ricordo solo che le Padua Freedom Lectures, che riprendiamo oggi dopo un anno di pausa causato dalla pandemia, sono una delle iniziative più importanti che stiamo mettendo in atto per le celebrazioni dell'800° anno di vita dell'Università di Padova e quindi fanno parte di questo ampio programma di avvicinamento alle celebrazioni dell'anniversario nel 2022, quindi molto presto, l'anno prossimo. Abbiamo voluto delle Padua Freedom Lectures, saranno 12 lectures di personaggi eccellenti che riguardano il tema della libertà. È il tema a cui teniamo di più, come ricordava prima il Rettore, e attorno a cui vogliamo riflettere perché davvero rappresenta il cuore etico della nostra università e della nostra missione iniziata nel Medioevo, nel 1222. Ecco, quindi queste Padua Freedom Lectures sono state pensate come un modo per capire come ci rapportiamo alla libertà, qual è il senso di questo concetto e di questa esperienza e come possa essere declinata per il futuro. E in questo momento penso specificamente non solo per il futuro del nostro paese, del mondo e del pianeta, ma anche per la nostra università che si affaccia al suo 9° secolo di vita. E quindi lo facciamo con voci autorevolissime di filosofi, di artisti, di letterati, scrittori, scienziati, politici, economisti, ma anche appunto attivisti come è Tawakkol Karman, e che è l'attivismo che tiene viva la fiaccola della libertà in varie parti del mondo anche oggi. E quindi siamo particolarmente grati a Tawakkol Karman di essere qui oggi. Quindi queste lezioni sono un investimento in eccellenza per tutte, per tutti quelli che ci seguono, per l'Ateneo e per chi vorrà accompagnarci appunto in un percorso così importante. Quindi riprendiamo oggi con Tawakkol Karman le Padua Freedom Lectures. La prima lecture è stata quella del filosofo francese, come si ricordava prima Jean-Luc Nancy. E Jean-Luc Nancy, da filosofo, ha scritto un libro bellissimo sulla libertà, di cui ci ha parlato appunto nella sua lecture l'anno scorso, che vede come un concetto che si rende visibile solo nella sua esperienza. È l'esperienza della libertà a dirci che cos'è la libertà. E quindi chi più di Tawakkol Karman potrà dirci che cos'è la libertà, visto che della libertà ha fatto il suo stile di vita, ha fatto la sua esperienza, ha dedicato la sua intera esistenza con determinazione, una determinazione che non è mai venuta meno neanche quando ha dovuto affrontare gli arresti, il carcere, e quindi sarà utile, sarà emozionante sentire la sua voce, che nasce proprio dall'esperienza di chi lotta per i diritti, perché ne vale sempre la pena e perché l'attivismo può effettivamente essere uno stile di vita. La lezione di Tawakkol si intitola Freedom and Peace, la libertà e la pace. E, come sentiremo fra poco, la pace e la libertà sono due grandi ideali che si sostengono e si attivano reciprocamente. Non c'è libertà senza pace, non c'è pace senza libertà. E quindi sono ideali che nella migliore delle ipotesi si traducono nella costruzione di società democratiche, aperte, parietarie, inclusive. Quindi grazie alla nostra ospite fin da ora e mi prendo qualche istante per ricordare alcuni punti centrali del suo profilo, che sarebbe lunghissimo ma che qui riassumo veramente per punti. Come ricordava il rettore, Tawakkol è stata insignita del premio Nobel per la pace nel 2011 assieme a Lee McBowey, che abbiamo avuto qui qualche anno fa, e alla presidente della Liberia, Johnson Sirleaf, e le motivazioni appunto sono appena state ricordate: lotta non violenta per la democrazia, per i diritti delle donne in Yemen. È stata incarcerata in diverse occasioni per le sue proteste a favore dei diritti umani. Nel movimento giovanile dello Yemen è conosciuta come madre della rivoluzione, la donna di ferro, la signora della primavera araba. È un'attivista, giornalista, politica, fondatrice del Peaceful Youth Revolution Council e della Tawakkol Karman International Foundation. Time Magazine l'ha descritta come una portatrice della fiaccola, una pedofora della libertà, della primavera araba, e come una delle donne più ribelli della storia. I wonder whether you recognize yourself there. È una delle personalità di alto profilo che hanno fatto parte del High Level Panel dell'Agenda di Sviluppo Sostenibile delle Nazioni Unite dopo il 2015 e attualmente è membro del comitato di sorveglianza di Facebook e dell'iniziativa Nobel Women. Attualmente vive negli Stati Uniti. Mi fa piacere concludere ringraziando il professor Paolo De Stefani che interverrà dopo la lezione di Tawakkol. Lo ringrazio soprattutto perché la sua grande autorevolezza resterà, ci aiuterà a trarre il meglio da questo incontro. Chiudo anche ringraziando tutti i presenti che ci seguono in streaming sui vari canali social dell'Ateneo. Now I would like to invite Nobel Prize for Peace Tawakkol Karman to deliver her lecture. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. First of all, I am so proud, and so happy to be with you, my sisters and brothers in University of Padua. It is a great and important and a very rich, very important, very prestigious university. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you again for inviting me to talk about freedom, a value that I see as a fundamental and central to our lives and struggles. For me, freedom is the value that we all should have and we all should defend with all strength and never compromise. Because losing freedom, it means losing humanity and becoming like a machine without will. Freedom has been and remains controversial, as there are those who see it as a prerequisite for a decent life in which people and societies can live without derogating from their rights or dignity. To some others who see freedom is not more important than security, that remains the very basic need and aim of a human. In the Arab region, the Arab Spring revolutions in 2011, which is a good example of such controversy and conflict, where regimes used a lot of money and resorted to repressive policies and suspicious alliances under the pretext that change, demands would lead to chaos. Unfortunately, chaos has indeed happened, but as a result of counter-revolutions led by dictatorial governments, especially in the regional, in the region, such as Saudi, Emirates, and Iran. So driven by fears that the Middle East would become free and democratic. driven by fears that their own countries would become free and democratic if Arab Spring countries win in their battles and succeed in their transitional period. The Arab Spring youth were met with the fears, anti-freedom war, where unfortunately Western governments choose to side with dictatorship at the expense of humanitarian principles in favor of their economic privileges and interests. For me, and for many people around the world, most of the people around the world, the Arab Spring could be the revolution of freedom at the beginning of the 21st century. We have called for freedom and liberation from oppressive and tyrannical regimes that do not hesitate to commit genocide against their societies in order to continue in power. Syria is a typical example of people subjected to the highest level of genocide in the world today, carried out by the Assad regime and its allies, Iran and Russia. As a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, as a human rights activist, as a journalist, I would like to draw attention to the relationship between freedom and peace, as it is an essential thing often ignored. There are two topics, 2 points of view. One, up to victims and those resisting oppression and injustice, and the other up to oppressors and tyrannical regimes. Freedom fighters see in freedom as a condition for peace. It is a condition for peace, stability, development, and prosperity of life, while tyrants see to freedom as a threat to their existence. Freedom fighters, peace means stability based on justice, on equality, citizenship, the rule of law, and freedom. While the eyes of tyrant is subordination of society to their tyranny and its complete acceptance of their oppression and inescapable destiny. Peace arising from the submission of the oppressed to their oppressors is not peace. Peace arising from the submission of oppressed to their oppressors is not peace, but rather a non-stop war in which humanity is crushed and the oppressed every day, every hour, and every second life find themselves breathing air bloated by slavery and submission to brute force. For us as fighters and advocate for freedom, dignity, and the right of everyone to decent life, peace is that empowering individuals to enjoy their rights and freedoms and ensuring their dignity through a state that serves as protector and not to threat to them, to be a threat to them. In a world where inequality, injustice, and oppression flourish constantly, freedom and peace become become words, just dream-like words, thus resulting in more and more people being pushed into a very low degree of destitution and life lacking in minimum dignified living standards. Our dreams of world with freedom, peace, justice, and equality are challenged by local and global regimes that act out of their own self interest and tirelessly work to ensure that the continuity of oppression, injustice, inequality, and indifference to injustice, oppression, hunger, and lack of very basic necessities of life among a growing number of people. The rise of racism in the West, for example, which culminated with Trumpism, and the world breathed a sigh of relief after his downfall from White House, shocked people everywhere. The enactment of discriminatory laws against Muslim citizens in a country, in a lot of around the world, and strangely that it is also happened in West, and for example in Denmark today, for example, paints a gloomy picture of potential threats to the values of equality and democracy across the West. We are not trying to give the West lessons in democracy, citizenship, and equality, but we judging its governments by the systems of values to which they claim, that they belong. We remind them of their values. Silence in response to violation to the Arab Spring revolutions and Arab Spring countries being crushed by the region's criminal regimes, and to their genocide wouldn't ensure the security of global peace in general, of America and European countries in particular, nor would keep them safe from implications resulting from the absence of respect of human rights and the rights of people to struggle for freedom, justice, and equality, and to peaceful transfer of power. How should the West be considered as a democratic and oasis of freedom, while it sees in the peaceful Arab Spring revolutions demanding freedom, justice, and the rule of law, democracy, and human rights as a threat to them and as a threat to their interests? It is puzzling. Perhaps even, not perhaps, it's really, it's shocking for us that some rise, their eyebrows at, Trumpism, condemning his racism and his bad act and abuse to power in White House, while at the same time feel nothing towards genocide massacres in Yemen, Libya, and Syria, which occurred in retaliation for political change demands and peaceful uprising. Our defenseless peoples have been subject to a relentless war by powers that to their own purpose have used overthrown regimes, terrorism, and regional axes, greedy for sharing our countries and wealth. There is nothing left of the international community but envoys who fill vacant posts with routine tasks and do little to prevent crimes against humanity or to stop wars of genocide. Militias and rogue regional states move away from human values, waging their wars without any fears from or any limitation, in full view of the international community. The trade-off should be between a just global orders and unjust ones. It is absurd and not counted as a change to replace an unjust global trend full of chauvinism and racism with similar one. So the trade-off should be between a just global order and unjust one. It is absurd and not accounted as a change to replace an unjust global trend full of chauvinism and racism with a similar one. I hear about calls and trends to isolate Western countries from what is happening in the third world, in the countries that suffer from tyranny and from corruption. Let me tell you in clear terms that such a step is not an appropriate solution to guarantee security and stability in the world and also in your own countries, and keep them safe from effects results from state collapse, increasing massacres, the spread of terrorism and sectarian militias, and encouraging, of religious states like Iran and Saudi Arabia into their, geopolitical environment. The solution does not lie in xenophobia, nor in anti-immigration discourse, because immigrants are not the problem. The problem lies in the fact that the international community has remained silent toward, counter-revolution countries, counter-revolution wars that have turned the Arab Spring countries into a hell, killed hundreds, thousands, and forced millions to flee from their homelands, collapsed to them, to find themselves without shelters in their open across state borders, in a savage world that doesn't recognize their humanity nor consider them human beings. So, dear brothers and sisters, the situation of freedom today is extremely worrying, even in regions typically seen as democratically well established, like in the United States, for example, and Europe. Therefore, there must be considerable and responsible efforts involving governments, democratic parliaments, human rights organizations, and the most prominent activists known for their orientation in support of freedom to reduce the escalation of repressive policies in the world, contrary to allegations by authoritarian regimes that it is a sign of chaos and havoc. Freedom is essential to contribute to stability and security. I cannot imagine our world be dominated by oppression and tyranny. So it is necessary to develop a supportive stance for freedom and for those who want to express themselves and their ideas and beliefs. I know that freedom and its limits are debatable in some ways, in some places, in some conferences. And discussion in this regard will not stop, even in the future. In principle, laws exist to regulate cases like this. but their final purpose should be freedom itself, not imposing restrictions and measures. To clarify, the philosophy of laws in countries like Belgium, the Netherlands, or Canada, etc., etc., seeks to guarantee freedoms. In Italy, seeks to guarantee freedoms, bearing in mind that these freedoms do not harm others. But in many other countries, classified as developing or dictatorial, the philosophy of laws mainly tends to impose restrictions and limits on freedoms. Technological development, revolution in communication, and the emergence of social media have led to more freedoms. But in turn, the developments have led to certain countries adopting a set of laws that seek to pose restriction on freedoms of the new space, including penalties targeting those who press the likes on Facebook and Twitter and other social network platforms. No one can deny that the abuse of freedom exists, but does the solution lie in restriction of freedom? Does the solution lie on attacking freedom of expression? Of course, we don't think so. There should be clear standards to explain how to stop the abuse of freedom and social media, especially the abuse of government and their electronic flies of freedom and social media. In my opinion, the case of preventing President Trump from tweeting on Twitter and Facebook actions against him makes us think in a more serious way. Was it necessary or not act so? Was it morally justifiable, and how to distinguish between the enemies of freedom, between using the freedom or abusing the freedom? Free societies can conduct a discussion on these topics and reach agreement that guarantee more freedom and fair amount of responsibility. But societies under dictatorial regimes cannot advance even one step in this direction. So sharing an opinion or a post on Facebook about the anti-corruption may be considered as a crime and incitement to hatred, while incitement to killing political opponents or targeting a part of society may be seen as a self-defense and necessities of national security. So you know that the fields of freedom are many and varied, and I think that it is necessary to guarantee freedom of expression, freedom of belief, freedom of movement, freedom of scientific research, freedom of political action, freedom of association, and this will serve as basis for bringing about tangible and real change to the lives of many societies and individuals. We must think also at the same time of freedom responsibility to protect it from being violated, but away from any guardianship. If there is something to be said at the end of my speech, it is that freedom is so precious that is worth the sacrifices, whatever they may be. But this doesn't mean that freedom has become an idolatry. On the contrary, we must be frank in distinguishing real and unreal freedom. Such distinctions should be as a result of revision by democratic individuals and institutions and countries, not dictatorial one. In this context, I would like to say that freedom will remain stronger than its enemies, as it has the power to overcome all obstacles and challenges. Yes, freedom will remain stronger than its enemies, as it has the power to overcome, all obstacles and challenges. And dear sisters and brothers, and dear my family in our great university, I would like to say something about my country, Yemen. Our Yemeni people have faced an all-out war of revenge for about 6 years. An ugly war of a new pattern that undermines the foundation of life of the entire population. Our state, unfortunately, has collapsed after the fascist Houthi militia invaded the capital of our country, Sana'a. The salaries have been unpaid. The health and services system collapsed, and international aid under control of militias. And this is from one hand. From other hand, and here I'm talking about Houthi militia backed from Iran. And in other hand, Saudi Arabia and the UAE coalition have destroyed our cities and infrastructures, established another militias loyal to them in the city of Aden and some other cities, and prevents, not just prevents, still they preventing the legitimate government and our president from returning to the country. He live under house arrest, kind of house arrest in Riyadh. So the UAE oil gas facilities, and not just UAE, Saudi led this, Saudi and UAE, but Saudi saying that and want to UAE to cover their crimes in Yemen, but it's Saudi and Emirates who are occupying my country, Yemen. So they occupying ports, they control oil gas facilities, and in addition, they occupying the islands of Socotra and Biyun. We call upon the world to stop this brutal war against Yemenis. We call on the world to support our people to restore their state, to restore Yemen, and complete the transition in accordance with the three references represented by the Security Council resolutions, the agreement of the transfer of power, and the national dialogue outcomes. We call on the democratic world to stop supporting Saudi and the UAE, to stop supporting their wars in Yemen through many ways. One of them, selling them weapons and arms, as well as to stop any kind of supporting Houthi militia from other countries, especially and particularly from Iran. We call the international community to support us, bring war criminals to justice, to try those involved in war crimes in Yemen before the International Criminal Court. And as I said, to compel Iran to stop its support for the Houthi militias, we call on the world to impose restrictions on warlords, militias leaders, instead of dealing with them as political parties. Finally, I want to assure you that freedom will not give up. Freedom fighters and strugglers will not give up. We will continue our role, our responsibility, our sacrificing for reaching to freedom, because freedom for us means peace. Freedom for us means democracy. So thank you so much. And through you, I should also thank all the struggles for freedom, dignity, and peace, for a better world where the values of justice, equality, freedom, democracy, and human rights prevail. Thank you.
Grazie davvero a Tawakkol Karman, premio Nobel per la pace nel 2011. Io personalmente sarei rimasto ad ascoltarla per moltissimo altro tempo. Ha detto parole importanti di denuncia e di riflessione rispetto al rapporto tra la libertà e la pace, e di come in realtà la pace non possa essere considerata un punto di vista rispetto semplicemente a un luogo in cui ci si trova rispetto a un altro. Professor Paolo De Stefani, docente di diritto internazionale del Dipartimento di Scienze Politiche, Giuridiche e Studi Internazionali, direi che la dottoressa Karman le lascia un notevole quantità di materiale per per domande, per questo dialogo che la attende da adesso in poi.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Tawakkol, for this very fascinating speech. I was really, I'm honored, and I feel as a privilege to be here and have this conversation with you. Thank you for your words, your thoughts, but also for your energy, for the passion you inject in what you say, in what you do, for all your life, in all your life. I just want to stress some of the points that you touched upon in your presentation. In my notes, I underlined some parts of your speech. For example, when you say that we are assisting to an escalation of repressive policies in the world, in the Arab region, but not only in the Arab region, also in Western countries, and freedom and human rights are under attack, and we don't realize that freedom and human rights actually contribute to stability and security, and we fight against them in the name of security and stability. And this is absurd, as you rightly said. So a second point you highlight is that Western countries, our countries, Europe, the US, etc., cannot be isolated, as you said, from what is happening in the Middle East, in Africa, in Northern Africa, in Central Africa, etc., in Asia, the Far East, etc. We are part of the problem, and we can be part of a solution to these problems. But this means that we cannot just detach ourselves from these situations and pretend living in a different world, in a different planet. And another point is that, of course, freedom can be manipulated, can be abused. But we have to enjoy the space for discussing freedom, to have a debate about which can be the legitimate limits to our individual freedoms. But this requires a space, a democratic space. And this, unfortunately, doesn't exist in many parts of the world. So the key, objective of our struggle, of your struggle, has been to create some space for debate in any part of the world, also in the place where, of course, people have different priorities, have other priorities, survival or some basic needs. And then finally, if I may, all this is very relevant and important when you address situations like the one that Yemenite people are living in a country which is ravaged by a conflict, such a long war, in which people are fighting against each other, but other states, foreign countries, are so deeply involved and so continuously provoke violations of human rights, war crimes, genocide, as you said. Okay, so all these discourse about freedoms are not detached from what is happening in the wars we are witnessing in the Middle East, in Yemen, etc. They are at the very heart of these problems, these political problems we are facing. I would have a lot of questions for you as related to this the speech you just gave us, but also in connection with your overall experience as a Nobel Prize laureate, as a activist, a woman activist in the Middle East, etc. I would start from this maybe to link some of the insights that you gave us. Talking about us, let's say, the university community we are that is hosting you today, university community in a Western state where there are young scholars, students, many girls, okay, that are aware of what you have presented or what is happening, but do not know exactly what to do. What can they do? What can we do to be to bring a little of positive elements to this debate and to this struggle? So, what the role of our university community and the role of academic freedoms in this field?
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor. Again, and I'm so proud to be with you in University of Padua, and I know a lot about this great university and its role also to fight, and their role, as professors, as students, to fight fascism and to fight also dictatorship. You people in Italy suffered a lot from dictatorship, and you did a great work to remove dictatorship in the past, and you still fight for making Italy better, free from any kind of abusing the authority and also corruption at the same time. So the role of you as Padua University is very big, is very important, and we count on you people, the faculty members, the students, everyone in this great university to do a lot for supporting freedoms around the world. Supporting freedoms around the world, that means that you should first, as a doctors, you should teach your students, which is like your kids. They have to know about freedom very well. They have to have the ability to help people around the world, to make their voices heard around the world. And those students and you as a doctors should know what is people facing in their trip, in their trip toward freedom and democracy. They have a lot of obstacles. They have a lot of conspiracy from inside their countries, from outside their countries, regionally and internationally. So you should be clever enough to distinguish between right and wrong. You should be very educated that those people who fight for freedom and justice, as they are fighters for freedom and democracy, they are at the same time victims from those countries that led the counter-revolution and from also the absence and the ignorance of those countries that, just watch what is happening there. For example, there was a very big ignorance from a lot of people, educated people, in the beginning of Arab Spring, and after that, about but what is the battle for? Some of them say that it is a sectarian war. It is war just, or conflict just for the power. So they don't introduce it as a battle for freedom and democracy. So after that, after the counter-revolution came, they they blame those freedom fighters for the, and we here, when I'm talking about freedom fighters, I'm talking especially about the peaceful one who still until now sacrifice for freedom and justice and democracy. So saying that, blaming Arab Spring, for example, about blaming the revolutionary people and don't blaming the head of the counter revolution is the big mistake. Also telling you that Arab Spring, for example, died, it is a big mistake that educated people describe it. So saying that it is that, so it is very important for you to know that the struggle, the battle for democracy and freedom didn't end and didn't stop, and people still sacrifice for their freedom and democracy, and Arab Spring didn't stop and will not stop. This is your rule to tell your students, and your students should understand that we are facing the enemies of freedom, and we root for the freedom and democracy. So they have to be our voices. In our countries, the one who carries the flags against dictatorship is the students, and some of their professors and doctors. So those great doctors and professors, they lead the change with their students. So you have a lot of responsibility as Padua University to tell your students, and your students has a very big responsibility to help those people around the world. And from other hand, you both has a responsibility to carry all the kind of accountability of your government if they support any dictator around the world, if they sell arms to those dictators who kills their people. For example, selling weapons to Saudi from Italy authority is the big mistake, is the big crime. Italy will be the one who participating in killing Yemenis. So you should stop this, this game and this, supporting the dictator around the world, especially the dictators in our region, in Arab region.
I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you for reminding also our responsibility as individuals and also as governments, as political body. The arms trade is something that also should be addressed as a war crime, of course, as a violation of human rights and international law, of course. And I suppose there are some questions coming from the audience, but I have many other issues that I would like to discuss with you. I ask maybe our host whether they have any questions. In case. You can stop me, but let me ask another thing. One important element, I think, in the struggle for human rights right now is to link this struggle for individual and people's rights with environmental issues. Because now, natural disasters, conflict, operations, and so on go hand in hand. How did you incorporate this element in your struggle, in your activism? Human rights on one hand and environment, sustainability, and so on. Did you manage to create a sort of bridge between the two?
Of course, there is a big link between them. This is our globe. This is our Earth. We should save it. Our Mother Earth needs our support, and we as human being, being threatened from the environmental problems, especially the climate change. So yes, anyone who talks about freedoms and democracy will also talk at the same time about they say that there is a democrat countries and undemocratic countries. Most of the blame go to those rich countries and the countries who collapse our climate, starting from US to Canada to Britain to etc etc. So we need all of us to be one voice and to make a great pressure against those countries, to stop their destruction to the global, climate, to our environment, by their strategies and by their practices with their companies that destroy our environment. At the same time, every individual has, the responsibility to save, to participate on saving our globe, our motherland, our Mother Earth. That is our responsibility. But also with the people who live under the dictatorial regimes in the third world, this is something. It is not the first priority for them. The first priority for them is to live, is to have freedom to talk, to speak. And also those countries, most of the third countries, also are victim of those strong and rich countries that, through their multinational companies, destroying the environment of their, countries. Yeah.
Thank you. I again ask Dr. Sopelsa if there is any question from the audience. I have a final topic, if you don't mind, Tawakkol, which is which is about the role of women in the Middle East, in the Arab world. We know that the UN is pushing for having women to have a better, a more relevant role in the peace processes in the field, but also in diplomatic discourse, in the political arena, and so on. What is the result of the 3025 resolution of the General Assembly? What progress has been done in this area of the world where conflicts are so frequent and still enduring?
Let me say that there is a good progress in the advanced countries, in the democratic countries, but unfortunately, with the undemocratic country, if there is progress with women rights, that means fake progress, because you can't say that there is women's rights if there is no democracy rights. You can't say that there is women's rights if there is not expression rights. So those authoritarian regimes use the women's rights as a mask to cover their ugly face. So, but indeed, in this time, after Arab Spring revolutions, the role of women in the public life, especially in the political life, was special in the revolution itself, and after the revolution with the transitional period was great. There was a great progress in the constitutions, in the laws, and even in the practice. So there was a great progress with the governments that was result of the Arab Spring revolutions. But after that, when the chaos starts and when the wars start, when the counter-revolution supported the militias, supported the military coups, supported the terrorist group, the women's rights unfortunately returned back. And as all human rights in our country. So the progress become nothing these days. Women are sacrificing against those counter-revolution leaders and the counter-revolution chaos in our countries, and also on the countries of those counter-revolution the countries of those leaders, like Saudi, for example, and Iran. Women are really, really suffered from those countries. And we see how many women inside Saudi prison, and all their crimes was and still freedom. It was just in the beginning for their freedom to drive a car, and now most of them in the prison. And there wasn't a real pressure from the international community, from Western community, to support those women. So supporting women, it is not just supporting them to be a fake image of dictatorial regimes in their governments or their parliaments. Supporting women, that means supporting their struggle for freedom, for democracy, for equality, for rule of law. And that will not happen if the Western countries become silent in front of all the violence toward those women's defenders. That is fake. That is, madness. What they are doing. They support women's rights, while those women either in the prison or died or kidnapped by militias or by military coups, like what happened in Egypt or in Iran or in Yemen or in Libya. So we need a real support for women in our region by the international community, not a decor. We will not be a decor. We will continue our rule as a woman, to force those dictators to leave the authority, to build our democracy, to be part of our freedom society as an effective person, not as a decor.
Excellent. And talking about the women's rights, can I ask you something about some form of structural violence which is affecting women, not only in the Middle East or the Arab world, but also, I would say, everywhere. For example, there is a debate now in Italy about forced marriages. What do you think about this practice, which is, of course, a way through which women are kept in a certain, private dimension and detached, separated from any political debate arena? Forced marriage.
Forced marriage, yeah, that's good to talk about. You are talking about forced marriage, so including the early marriage, and that is one of our battle. Every woman around the world should fight against forced marriage. Every woman should have her husband or her partner as her choice, not to be forced by her family or by anyone else. And this is one of our battle, and this was and still our battle, and including especially the early marriage. When we after we forced the dictator to leave in November 2011, which was, we declared the winning of our first goal of our revolution, forcing the dictator to leave the authority, Dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh. And then we started to make national dialogue and to write the new constitution. So what we wrote in the new constitution, in the draft of new constitution, that we prevent the early marriage, and anyone who will force his daughter to marry in early age, he should be trial, and he should be accountable. Anyone, her father, her mother, her brother, anyone. So, and this should also include any kind of forced marriage, and woman has to own her decision. We are talking about to own her political decision, to be active in all the field of the life, in the public life. What about in her own life? That is something obvious. That is, yeah, we should all work for it. And I am really surprised that Italy maybe suffer from forced marriage. Did you say that or something?
Yeah, there is a problem that involves some community of migrants from states like Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc.
With the community of immigrants, yeah, you should as
Sure.
Italy do a lot. Yeah, you should as Italy do a lot of work to make awareness for those people that this is not true. And believe me, most of them will be convinced because they came from conservative, society, or from a certain area to country like Italy, and the awareness will become more and more. But you shouldn't stop that. You shouldn't give up if you find some cases that doesn't accept that, or no, you should follow that. Not just for marriage, also you have to focus on education. It's very important. The education itself will make the woman herself to be aware about her destiny, about also how to own her decision. That is very important.
Thank you very
And
much,
I am sure
Tawakkol, for your.
I'm sure that you will win in this very important battle. And this is important and easy to solve. People, they are so kind, and they also will be able to change their wrong behaviors.
Thank you for your thoughts and for your energy, your faith. And apropos, do you think there are some? What is what can be a driver of activism? I mean, you need some energy coming from, I don't know, ideology, or from I don't know, cultural models, religions, etc. Do you think that the human rights discourse needs to be supported by this energy coming from ideology of spirituality, I don't know, religions? And so do you think that this link and not also the responsibility of spiritual leaders for the cause of human rights should be somehow emphasized because they have a responsibility?
It is really from believing on my dreams and believing on my goals and in believing on my people. I am sure that we will not lose this battle. So when I start dreaming on this to fight corruption, to fight dictatorship, at the same time I start dreaming and believing on people around me in my society and around the world. So this, what you call it, energy, came from this. I believe that we are in the right side of history, and if I didn't carry the initiative, if I didn't being in the first line of this battle, that means that I how can I say I portrayed my people. That means that I am in the wrong side of history. So those people just need a voice to wake them up. And when they wake, when they are aware what is happening, they will be your hand. They will be with you, and they will not let you down. And that is what's happening. So believe in the people around the world. Believe on those dreamers for freedom and democracy, and don't lose hope. So if you lose hope, you portrayed yourself and the people. So this is what I started my struggle, and I was and still ready for any kind of sacrifices for myself, for my kids, and for the people who believed on me. So I will not give up, and I will not stop. Be active. I will not make my energy to be down. I will continue this rule. So it comes from belief on the dream, on the goals, on the noble goals, and believing on people.
Thank you, Tawakkol. Now the floor goes to Mattia Supelsa.
Thank you
Grazie,
so
professor
much.
Paolo De Stefani. E grazie a Tawakkol Karman per questa interessante discussione. Io prima di lanciare una domanda fra quelle che sono arrivate attraverso i nostri canali social, vorrei lasciare la parola alla professoressa Annalisa Oboe, che voleva intervenire anche lei all'interno di questa discussione. Quindi prego, professoressa Oboe, se vuole intervenire, se vuole fare a sua volta qualche domanda a Tawakkol Karman.
Perché non mi vedo in video. Ecco sì.
Eccola.
Grazie, grazie Tawakkol. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you a more personal question, if I may. I remember very well. Okay, thank you. I remember very well when the Jasmine Revolution started, and it was such a moment of hope throughout Europe, throughout Africa. I mean, I remember it clearly, and we thought, oh, finally, this is going to be, the moment for this part of the world. So there was a kind of utopian hope that things would go well. Now, I really would like to ask you if you can describe from your own personal viewpoint and experience what it was like, what that moment was like, and how it started, and your involvement in it, how the mechanism of the revolution was set into place.
Yeah, it is long story. Yeah, it is long story, but let's make it, say that it starts with me as a journalist who refused to be a traditional journalist, a traditional woman journalist who just talk about social issue. It is a very important to talk about social issue, about women's issue, about family issue. But for me, as Tawakkol, I decided to start my journey as a journalist from the hardest gate, from the hardest point, which is criticizing the dictator himself, Ali Abdullah Saleh, about his leading the country, about the dictatorship in general, about the wars that he waged in Yemen many times inside Yemen with tribes, with the cities, between cities and tribes, etc. So this was the first beginning, and the second was when I started my organization, Women Journalists Without Chains, and through this organization, which it was my important tool, my power to defense on human rights in general, in front of the violence of the dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh and his regime. And so this organization did a great work on for educating and making awareness for people, Yemeni people, how nonviolence is very important and has also a very great result if you use. So we practiced non-violence methods and tools through sit-ins, demonstrations, etc., to defend human rights in general and expression rights in particular. And we didn't ask permission from the government, and that makes these demonstrations that started in 2006 until 2011 every Tuesday in front of the government, and we had a lot of attack. And they put us in the prison many times. They hate us. They threaten me, etc. But we, as Women Journalists Without Chains and victims who was with us and we were with them for their rights. Was the platform for making awareness for people in Yemen, because Yemeni people has more than 60 million weapons. So and they use violence, unfortunately, to solve their problems. And the government of Ali Abdullah Saleh was supported those kind, of wars and conflicts between sectors and tribes, etc., etc. So that was also very important period of our struggle. And the third period of struggle, which is the revolution, and which is the starting of the Arab Spring after the Tunisian revolution, when they stepped down, forced the Ben Ali, their dictator, to resign, and he fled from Tunis. That was our big chance, our big opportunity to tell Yemenis people, look, this is okay. We were 6 years, in weekly demonstrations and sit-ins, making, calling the government to stop violence, to stop their human rights, to attack human rights, to stop wars, to stop supporting even terrorists, etc., etc. But it was peaceful act calling for reforms from the government. Now our opportunity to force this government, to force this dictator to leave the authority, because he is the resource of every crisis in Yemen. And that was, and when they kidnapped me and arrested me, that was also make my voice stronger, and Yemeni people become aware and convinced to be, with our struggle. So it is a big story, but the most important point of this story, that when they arrested me, after they released me, some of my friends, also from European delegation in Yemen, and some ambassadors visited me to my organization, trying to convince me, Tawakkol, it is a very difficult path. You will be alone. Nobody will follow you in this journey. But I told them that you will see millions of Yemeni people will follow me and will be rising the same slogan of freedom. And that is exactly what happened. I was the only woman in the beginning, but after that, millions of women was in the street, and they shared with men, leading the street, and was in the first line, not just sharing, they lead the revolution. So it is very good and very important, story of fighting for freedom, for dignity, for democracy. And we still that people that is still sacrificing, that still dream, and that is still believe on the destiny of our people, which is freedom and democracy. So we will win the battle. So I want to say that don't give up, and don't think that we lose with all this chaos that is happening, that with all these wars that will it's fake winning from counter revolutions, but people are winning every day. And the destiny, and in Italy, what is the destiny of every great revolution? At the end, it's with the will of people with democracy and freedom.
Thank you so much. Could you go back to Yemen?
Yes.
Are you allowed to?
Of course, I am.
Okay. So you're a free person. You won't be persecuted.
But I don't know. I need to go after maximum 7 minutes, because my little boy will wake.
For keeping you so long. He's hungry.
By the way, I just gave birth to my baby boy. His name is Aram, and I am so happy that my first lecture after giving birth in the University of Padua. So I had a lot of conferences before that, but as a university, it's with the University of Padua, so we are family now.
Yes, absolutely. And we are doubly grateful that you could actually give this lecture after having given birth to your new boy. just a month ago. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I wish to thank you from the heart of this university, because your experience will be cherished, and some admonishment, I would say, from you that about our accountability, we will keep them in mind, because everyone is connected and everyone has responsibilities. So thank you, and the responsibilities to making freedom a reality is everyone.
You want to ask about Yemen? You can ask, no problem. You can
Sorry,
ask
say
about
again.
Yemen. You can ask about Yemen.
I'm not sure I understand, sorry.
You said that you want to ask about Yemen. Yes, you can ask about it as a final question, if you don't mind.
No, you tell me about Yemen. I wanted to know whether you could go back to Yemen.
This is a very good question. Look, I am doing all my best, all my responsibility, all my efforts to support Yemeni people inside Yemen. And I am telling the world what is the war crimes happened in Yemen from both sides, from Houthi militia backed from Iran and from Saudi and UAE coalition in Yemen. So both of them, Saudi, UAE, and Houthis, they are saying to me as Tawakkol Karman that they're enemy, and they made a lot of obstacles, and they wage a lot of campaigns against me, and they don't want me to return to Yemen. So the question, do I want to return to Yemen or not? Not can I go to Yemen or not? So I in this moment, I don't want to return to Yemen now, because it is their crimes is continue, and my voice is very loud, and I am free from any kind of their application. For example, arresting me or preventing me from speaking, or even preventing me from travel. So is this the best moment to return to Yemen? I can tell you now, it is not the best way, because Yemenis still needs me as Tawakkol to be outside, to move freely without any obstacles. But the time to return to Yemen is very soon, and I will do it very soon. Yeah, I will do it.
Safely. I wish you can safely return to Yemen.
No problem, no matter of what the consequences. So the question: do I want it to be there? Is it the good? Is it the good time? I'm telling you, no, it is not the good time, especially with the blockade. The blockade is there, by Saudi and Emirates, and I will not move freely.
Okay. Anyway, thank you. I wish you, stay well, take care of yourself and your family, and maybe one day Yemen will be free and you can go back to your country. Thank you.
And I hope to visit you in person in Padua.
Absolutely. You're always invited and you will always be welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you and to all audience students. Bye.
Thank you. Stay well and take care. Goodbye.
Ringraziamo ancora la nostra ospite, purtroppo il tempo è tiranno, anche per lei in realtà, ma giustamente con un bambino piccolo appena nato non si può dire di rimanere di più a dialogare con lei su queste tematiche così importanti. A me non resta altro che ringraziare di nuovo la premio Nobel Karman la professoressa Annalisa Oboe e il professor Paolo De Stefani per essere stati con noi e per aver dialogato con noi così a lungo con la nostra ospite, e speriamo che ovviamente le prossime Padua Freedom Lecture siano ancora più interessanti e più dense di argomenti da ascoltare e su cui dibattere. Ringrazio di nuovo il nostro pubblico e chiunque ci abbia ascoltato da casa, e soprattutto speriamo che il periodo sia ormai abbastanza fecondo per permetterci di abbandonare le discussioni solamente in remoto e online, e di poterci trovare di nuovo di persona tutti quanti. Grazie di nuovo a tutti quanti e a tutte le persone che ci hanno ascoltato, e alla prossima volta.